My name is Sarah Donnelly, and for the last 10 years, I've been the woman everyone pretended didn't exist. Dear viewers, welcome to our channel. Subscribe to receive more stories every day. I wasn't invited to birthdays, holidays, or family gatherings. My name was deleted from photo albums and locked out of social circles I used to host. I became an echo of scandal, a punchline whispered behind hands at church or the grocery store. They called me unstable, failed mother, a gold digger, a woman who abandoned her only son. But I never abandoned anyone. When the call came about Greg's death, it didn't come from the Donnellys. It came from my old neighbor, Mrs. Hannah, who had been silently watching all these years. Your ex-husband died, Sarah. I thought you should know. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just stared out the window as the rain slipped down the glass. Not because I felt nothing, but because I felt too much. The man who once swore to protect me had spent the last decade making sure I was erased. And now I was expected to stand at his funeral, in front of the family who ruined me. A week later, a letter arrived. Not a call, not a message. A formal printed envelope with gold trim. Inside, the family of Gregory Donnelly requests your presence at the celebration of life ceremony. You are encouraged to share a few words. It was signed by Diane Donnelly, his mother, the same woman who testified in court that I was unfit to parent. I held the card in my hand and laughed bitterly. Share a few words. Was this an olive branch, or a public execution? My therapist warned me. Sarah, if you go there, you need to be ready. They haven't changed. You need to be strong enough to speak the truth without needing validation. I told her, I'm not going for them. I'm going for me. And for my son. The church hadn't changed. Same red brick building with a steeple that pierced the sky. I hadn't stepped foot in it since the custody hearing. I walked inside and felt every eye snap toward me. Whispers began to swirl like a current. Is that her? She had the nerve to come. She looks older. She probably wants attention. I smiled politely and sat in the back row, alone. Greg's casket stood at the front. Dark mahogany, polished, closed. I wondered what secrets were buried with him. Or more importantly, which ones were still waiting to be uncovered. Then I saw him. My son Noah, now 19. Taller, broader. Still with that same mop of dark curls I used to brush off his forehead. He didn't look at me. Not once. He stood with Diane, arm around her shoulders, the perfect grieving grandson. And me. I wasn't even a footnote. The service began with the expected speeches. Long-winded stories about Greg's golfing habits. His business acumen, his generous heart. All eyes. The man they were describing wasn't the one I had married. That man disappeared the day I refused to sign the second mortgage. The day I started asking questions about missing money, late-night calls, and his assistant's perfume on his collar. Then came the jokes. His brother, Chuck, took the mic and said, Greg was a good man, even when his life got complicated. You all remember the circus a few years back. But he came out on top. He always did. Laughter. Even the pastor chuckled. I felt my chest tighten. Was this a memorial or a roast? Then Diane spoke. Wearing a pearl necklace and crocodile tears, Diane took the microphone and said, Greg was a devoted father, even when others gave up. Even when people walked away. We stood by him. Family stood by him. She turned her eyes to me. Just for a second. The crowd followed her gaze. Suddenly, all eyes were on me. Then came the moment. We'd now like to open the floor to anyone who'd like to share memories. Even those we haven't seen in a while. The smirk on Diane's face was unmistakable. The trap had been set. My heels clicked against the church floor like a countdown. My hands didn't tremble. My voice didn't shake. I took the mic, looked at every face in the room and said, My name is Sarah Donnelly. I was Greg's wife. I'm also the mother of his only child. Noah looked up. Finally. But his expression was unreadable. You've all heard stories. No. I heard them too. From the very people who claim to love Greg most. But I didn't come here to argue with ghosts. I came here to tell the truth. And then I reached into my purse. Flash drive. A manila envelope. A voice recorder. Murmurs. Tension so thick you could slice it. Before Greg passed, he forgot something. Something important. He forgot that secrets rot in silence. And today I'm opening the vault. I plugged the flash drive into the projector and hit play. Greg's voice filled the church. Chuck, you promised me Diane wouldn't find out. The second will has to stay hidden. If Sarah finds it, we're screwed. People gasp. The screen displayed a series of emails. One from Greg to his lawyer, time-stamped weeks before our divorce, instructing him to amend the assets division quietly. Sarah is becoming too smart. Another showed correspondence between Diane and a private investigator. Subject line. Find dirt on Sarah. Anything to make her look unstable. There were photos, audio messages, texts between Greg and his mistress, laughing about my panic attacks and mocking the therapy I sought after our split. Noah, I said, my voice soft now. I never left you. They took you from me. And they made you believe I was broken. He didn't move. The room was dead silent. But Diane stood up. That's enough. This isn't the time or the place. And that's when I pulled out the final card. Envelope. This is a court-stamped custody order, dated 2 years ago, granting me shared visitation. You never told him. You intercepted every letter, every call. The room is frozen. The family's lies are unraveling. But the biggest secret of all, that's still to come. When Noah takes the mic and reveals what he did behind their backs. The silence after I finished speaking wasn't just uncomfortable. It was nuclear. You could hear the creak of the pews, the shallow breaths, the sound of someone's program slipping from their hands and fluttering to the floor. But no one moved. Not even Diane. Especially not Diane. She stood frozen, the corners of her mouth twitching like she couldn't decide whether to scream or faint. For a moment I thought she might charge at me. But her eyes flicked to Noah, and that stopped her cold. He was staring at me. Really staring. Not through me, not with pity, not with suspicion. Just aware. Something behind his eyes was breaking loose. Could see it. All the little fractures that had been hidden under years of careful Donnelly family programming were starting to widen. I wanted to run to him. I wanted to hug him, cry into his chest, tell him everything I'd been holding in for a decade. But I didn't. I had already said my piece. So I stepped away from the microphone, walked back to my seat and sat down. The projector screen behind me was still lit up, the last email frozen in place. It read, "Destroy all paper records. If she finds out about the second will, Diane's inheritance is gone." I watched Diane's lips move, whispering something into Chuck's ear. He looked like a man trying to contain a panic attack inside a suit that was 2 sizes too small. Then Noah stood up, and everything changed. He didn't ask for permission. He just walked to the front, slow and measured, like he had made up his mind before his feet even moved. Someone tried to clap, but it died in the air. Noah took the mic. His voice, when it came, was low but steady. No tears, no tremble, just truth. "I used to think my mom left me," he began. "That she didn't want me. That she couldn't handle being a mother." He looked down at his shoes, took a breath, and raised his head again. "I believed it because I was told to believe it. Over and over. By people I trusted. People who told me they were protecting me." He looked at Diane. She flinched. But they weren't protecting me. They were protecting him. The entire room was now holding its breath. Even Chuck, who had started toward the exit, stopped cold. Noah pulled out his phone and scrolled. "I started digging 3 months ago. I hired a lawyer on my own. Used money I saved working weekends at the campus bookstore." He tapped on the screen. "These are the voicemails they didn't want me to hear. The letters they said never arrived. The emails they deleted from my account when I was still a minor." He hit play. First was my voice. "Noah, sweetheart. I sent you a birthday gift and a letter. I hope it gets through this time. If not, I'll try again. Miss you. I'll never stop trying. Then another. Noah, it's Mom. I was at the custody hearing today. They didn't let me see you. I don't know what they told you about me, but I need you to know. I never stopped fighting. And another. I'm so proud of you. Even from afar. I hear you made honor roll. I just wish I could have been there to tell you in person. Sniffles. The Donnellys looked like statues caught in a heat wave. Diane finally stood up, her voice shrill. This is not the time. This is your father's funeral, not some courtroom circus. But Noah turned to her. And the look he gave her could have shattered stone. You're right, he said. It's his funeral. And for years, you told me to honor him by hating her. By pretending she didn't exist. But that's not honor. That's manipulation. He turned to the rest of the room. I was taught to hate the woman who gave birth to me. I was told she was unstable, dangerous, that she didn't want me, that she had a breakdown and abandoned me. He shook his head slowly. But none of that was true. She was fighting for me. And you. His voice cracked just slightly as he pointed to Diane. You were fighting to keep me from her. Diane sat down without a word. Her hands trembled in her lap. Her eyes, wide, empty, were fixed on the floor. Noah continued. When I confronted Grandma a few weeks ago, she broke down and admitted it. She said they couldn't risk Mom finding out about the second will, or about what really happened the night Dad pushed for full custody. People were shifting now, heads turning. The atmosphere had flipped entirely. I found the documents, he said. I had them verified. There was a second will. Dad signed it right before the divorce. In that version, Mom was listed as co-beneficiary and granted joint custody. Chuck stood up. That's a lie. Noah looked at him coolly. Then why'd you hire a firm to shred everything 3 days after it was signed? I traced the invoice. The payment came from your company's account. Chuck didn't sit down. He didn't speak. He just walked straight out of the church, his face pale and stiff like plaster. Noah turned back to the front. I loved my father, but I can't pretend anymore. I can't pretend he didn't hurt people just because he's gone. I can't keep playing along with a story that was written to erase my mother. He looked at me, right at me. Mom, he said softly, I'm sorry. I should have looked sooner, should have questioned more. But I see you now. And I know the truth. I don't remember standing up. I don't remember walking toward him. But the next thing I knew, I was in his arms. He smelled like the same shampoo I used to use on him when he was little. He held me like he'd been waiting years for that moment. People began to rise. Some left quietly. Some lingered in silence. A few came over to say sorry, to mumble apologies they should have said a decade ago. But I didn't care about them. I only cared about the boy in my arms. My son. The one they couldn't keep from me anymore. We stayed like that for a long time. Long after the casket was wheeled out. Long after the church emptied. There was still one more truth to reveal. One more secret no one in the Donnelly family saw coming. And that would come at the reading of the will. 1 week later, I walked into the Donnelly family law firm not as the ex-wife they smeared, but as the woman they could no longer ignore. The room smelled like dust and old money. Mahogany panels, brass handles, oil paintings on the wall, all designed to intimidate. But I had nothing left to fear. The worst had already been done to me. And still I had survived. The lawyer, a pale, quiet man named Mr. Caffrey, nodded stiffly as I entered. They're all here, he said, voice barely above a whisper. In the conference room. I walked in. Diane was seated at the end of the table, her pearls conspicuously absent, her makeup thinly painted over skin that had aged a decade in 7 days. Chuck sat beside her, avoiding my eyes, tapping his foot under the table. A few cousins and extended relatives lined the back wall, whispering behind folders and purses, unsure where to direct their loyalty. Noah walked in behind me and sat to my left. Mr. Caffrey cleared his throat. We're here to execute the reading of the last will and testament of Mr. Gregory Donnelly. As of now, we have two versions. One signed and notarized 7 months before the divorce, and another that was submitted later, under questionable conditions. Diane's voice cut through the room. That second one was verified. The judge accepted it. Mr. Caffrey raised a single finger. The amended version was accepted, because the original was never brought to light. Until now. He laid a manila folder on the table. This document, he said, was recovered from an off-site storage facility registered in Greg Donnelly's name. It contains a certified, notarized version of the first will, bearing 3 independent witness signatures, and a locked safe code that only he and his lawyer would have known. Chuck shot up from his chair. That's impossible. That copy was destroyed. Caffrey turned slowly. Apparently, Mr. Donnelly didn't trust you as much as you thought. Diane reached out to grab the folder, but Caffrey pulled it back. I'll read it aloud if you don't mind. She sat down, lips pressed tight. He began reading. In the event of my death, I, Gregory Charles Donnelly, hereby leave my estate, investments, and properties to be divided equally between my legal spouse at the time of this signing, Sarah Donnelly, and my son, Noah Donnelly. In addition, I acknowledge my intention to amend custody to reflect shared guardianship between myself and Sarah, contingent on her continued medical clearance. He paused, looking around the room. That means, he said, Sarah Donnelly is the legal co-beneficiary of Mr. Donnelly's estate. That includes the house, the rental properties, the Donnelly Family Trust, and his shares in the real estate holding group. I didn't move. I didn't speak. But Diane did. This isn't justice. She poisoned him. Manipulated him. Mr. Caffrey looked at her with the cold, blunt patience of a man who's heard every lie before breakfast. The document is dated 2 weeks before your own private investigator filed a report attempting to build a case for unfitness, he said calmly. A case that, according to court records, was dismissed before ever being filed. She turned on Noah. You knew about this. You let her. He cut her off. I didn't know, he said, quiet but firm. But now I do. And I'm not going to pretend anymore. Caffrey closed the folder. There's one more thing, he said, lifting a small envelope. This letter was found with the original will. It's handwritten. It's addressed to Sarah. He passed it to me. I held it in my hands, feeling my fingers tremble for the first time in days. It was his handwriting. Planted. Little messy. Just like when he used to leave notes on the fridge back when things were still good. Opened it. Sarah, if you're reading this, then something happened. Maybe too late to fix everything, but not too late to tell the truth. You were right about the money. About the calls. About the lies. I buried it all because I was scared. 'Cause I thought I could fix it without you finding out. And when you found out anyway, I panicked. I did things I can't undo. But I see it now. You weren't unstable. You weren't unfit. You were stronger than I could ever admit. I tried to ruin your name to protect my own. I let them turn our son against you. And I don't expect forgiveness. But I wanted to leave this, because you deserve to be seen, not erased. Sorry, Sarah. This was always yours too. Greg. I felt something inside me loosen. Not quite peace. Not yet. But something close to it. I folded the letter and placed it gently back inside. Diane sat in silence, her mouth slightly open. Her hands curled like claws that had nothing left to grip. Noah reached over and took my hand. What now? He asked. I looked at him. My son. My miracle. The boy they tried to rewrite into a weapon, and who had become my greatest witness instead. Now, I said, we build something honest. No more hiding. No more pretending. He smiled. For the first time in years, it reached his eyes. We walked out of that office together, mother and son. Not erased, not broken, but finally whole. Behind us, the Donnelly legacy lay in silence, its lies unspooled, its secrets exposed under the weight of one voice that refused to stay silent. And when they handed me the microphone, they never imagined it would echo this far. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, Please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story and tell us where you're watching from.